Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 10, Prahlad, the best among exalted devotees, text 14. Yeta kirtayan mayam tvaya gitam idam naraha tvam chamam cha smaran kale karma bandhat pramuchite yetat kirtayan bayam Tvaya gitam idam naraha Tvam chamam chasmaran kale Karma bandhat pramuchite. Yetat kirtayan mayam Tvaya gitam idam naraha Tvam chamam chasmaran kale Karabandhat pramuchite. Yaitat kirtayan mayam Tvaya gitam idam naraha Tvam chamam chasmaran kale Karabandhat pramuchite. Ya anyone who etat this activity kirtayet chants mayam unto me tvaya by you gitam prayers offered idam this naraha human being tvam you cha as well as mam cha me also smaran remembering kale in due course of time karma bandhat from the bondage of material activities pramuchite becomes free. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. One who always remembers their activities and my activities also, and who chants the prayers you have offered, becomes free in due course of time from the reactions of material activities. Prabhupada has stated, here it is stated that anyone who chants and hears about the activities of Prahlad Maharaj and in relationship with Prahlad's activities, the activities of Nrsimhadev, gradually becomes free from all the bondage of fruitive activities, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita 2.15 and 2.56. Yam hinabhyantantyate purusham purusharshava samaduka sukham dhiram samritatpaya kalpate. All best among men, Arjuna, the person who is not disturbed by happiness and distress and is steady in both is certainly eligible for liberation. Tukeshuva managmanak sakeshuva gataspriha pitaragavaya krodas titadirmunu uchate. One who is not disturbed in spite of the threefold miseries, who is not elated when there is happiness, and is free from attachment, fear, and anger. It's called a sage of steady mind. Devotee should not be grieved in an awkward position, nor should he feel extraordinarily happy in material opulence. This is the way of expert management of material life. Because the devotee knows how to manage expertly, he is called Jivan Mukta. As Rupa Goswami explains in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Iha yasya haradasya karmana manasa gira nikilasya vapsatsu jivan mukta sa uchite. Person acting in Krishna consciousness, or in other words, in the service of Krishna, with his body, mind, intelligence, words, is a liberated person even within this material world, although he may be engaged in so-called material activities. Because of constantly engaging in devotional service in any condition of life, the devotee is free from all material bondage. Bhakti punati man nishta shwa pakan api sambhavat. Even one born in the family of mediators is purified if he engages in devotional service. Srila Jiva Goswami cites this verse and logically supporting that anyone who chants about the pure life and activities of Prahlad Maharaj is freed from the reactions of material activities. Ya etat kirtayan mayam tvaya gitam idam naraha tvam cha mam cha smaran kale karabandhat pramuchate. One who always remembers your activities and my activities also, and who chants the prayers you have offered, becomes free in due course of time from the reactions of material activities. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutaya Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskatyade Siddharane. Our reactions to our material activities have two aspects, known as Prakatmika Shakti and Avaratmika Shakti. Say, Avaratmika Shakti, you've heard that before? Avaratmika Shakti means that which covers our consciousness. And there are different degrees of covering. As it says, Dumena Vriyate Vanira, Hitardar Shel, Molena Cha, Ito Benavrita Garabas, Tata Tenedam Avritam. Just like Dumena Vriyate Vanir, just like fire is covered by smoke. Dumena Vriyate Yatardar Shel, Molena Cha, or as the mirror is covered by dust. Ta Garne Vritas Garaba, or as the embryo is covered by the womb, so the living entity is covered by different degrees of lust. So this may be known as Prarabdha karma, as well as Aparabdha karma. Prarabdha karma means that which is stored within ourselves. So there's a whole storage of lust and its different manifestations, and they cover our consciousness. In the animal form of life, there's quite a bit of covering, so one is practically unconscious. The human form of life is supposed to be almost conscious, but actually it's a kind of a dreamlike state. But still, the example is given that fire is covered by smoke. Now, if the fire is expertly handled, then gradually the smoke will go away. Now, we keep on pouring water on the fire, then the smoke will simply increase. Until finally you don't have fire anymore. You have dust. Therefore, human form of life is meant for expertly handling material contamination, lust, so that the fire of Krishna consciousness illuminates us and burns away all the material contamination. Now, although we're covered, we're also being impelled. Prakatmika Shakti. Just like the Avritam Gyana Etena, Gyanino Nityavarena, Kamarupena Kuntya, Dusprena, Analena Cha. Thus, the man's pure consciousness is covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire. So, this is the impelling potency, which is impelling the living entity to act in so many material ways. the more that impelling potency increases, the more our anxiety increases to fulfill the desires. And the more we want to fulfill our desires, then temporarily they may become fulfilled, but then it's compared to pouring gasoline on fire. If you pour gasoline on fire, temporarily the fire will go out, but then it blazes even more. So one can try to satisfy lust, and temporarily it feels satisfied. There's a kind of relief, liberation, but then the next moment it flares up again. One is even more lusty, more materially desired, more impelled. So where does it all begin? It seems rather unfair, the poor little living entity, 1/10,000th the size of a tip of your hair in size, took a brief journey into the material world, and suddenly he's entangled in all this material consciousness. So where does it all begin? Is it unfair? Are we all victims? This big man in the sky called Krishna, he just was playing around with us, decided to see what we'd like to torture the little guys for a while. And we happen to be one of the unlucky ones. Now Krishna says, Indriyani mano buddhira asya dishtaram uchate aitera vimohadesha jnanam avritya dehinam. The senses, the mind, the intelligence are the sitting places of lust, which veils a real knowledge of living entity and bewilders him. So how did it all happen? How did we get here? Well, the whole thing begins with hearing. And we remain here in the material world because we're attracted to hearing. Hearing what? The glory is of how wonderful the material world is. The material world exists on novels, romance novels, advertisement. To sell toothpaste, there's a half-naked lady. The idea is as soon as you brush your teeth, they'll become effulgent and all the ladies will fall down before you. Oh, Brahman. And to sell anything, there's a handsome man on a horse smoking a cigarette. The horse dies of lung cancer shortly afterwards. But that's not mentioned. Even Ronald McDonald, he got cancer, colon cancer from eating meat, and became a vegetarian. You know Ronald McDonald? McDonald's? They don't have a McDonald's here. But I think there was it was after my time, but there was some clown called Ronald McDonald. He laughed his way into the hospital. So it's all based upon advertisement. There are literally billions of books advertising anything. Every single sport, every single part of the body. There is volumes and volumes. You can go on Google and you can find out about anything. The size of a butterfly's wing. You can find out to the fraction of a centimeter. Whatever you want to know is all there, if you're interested. And people's minds are just filled with these ideas and thinking that this is a perfect way we're going to enjoy. But it's only 4 fields. There's only 4 fields of enjoyment: eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Therefore, if you walk outside, you go to a kiosk, there's 100 magazines just on eating. There's another 100 magazines on how to sleep. People have become so bewildered, they don't even know how to sleep anymore. They have to study sleeping. And of course, mating is off the charts. Half the internet is all about how to mate. Even an ant has more knowledge than human beings nowadays in these fields. Probably so the dogs don't have to study Freud to figure it out. They seem to have it all down by birth. As far as defense, people have everything has become so complicated. You have to feel secure, you have to have millions of dollars in the bank. And then another 15 pounds of gold stored somewhere. A whole armory of defense weapons. Then you may feel a little secure. Maybe a little bit secure. So eating, sleeping, mating, defending have become very complicated in the human form of life. It requires great education. Matter of fact, by the time you know what to do, you're dead. By the time you figure it all out, you can't figure it out. So it's all based on hearing. The television, the radio, the magazines, the educational system. You are this body, and you should eat, sleep, mate, and defend. And people, that's all they know. It's all they're trained up for. Exactly Gokara, on the same level as the cats, the dogs, well, actually the Gokara, the cow and the ass. And yet people are proud. They have titles after their name, and they think they're educated. But actually they have no education. They have no knowledge. And by that hearing, if we actually think something is valuable and worthwhile to try out, after hearing so many information about what the taste of this dead animal will be like, then we think, I can't wait. I have to have it immediately. People have become so anxious, and there's always some button you press. Immediately someone jumps on a motorcycle, bringing the dead animal to you immediately. Because you can't wait one moment longer to experience it. And so we hear the glories about sense gratification, then the mind becomes a repository of all kinds of desires, because that's what hearing does. It creates desire within oneself, within the mind. And when the mind is agitated, specifically for one of the senses, you got to see something. As Prabhupada was saying on a tape I keep on listening to, there's a Bengali saying, if my eyes want to see it, then why shouldn't I see it? Why shouldn't you see it? Well, if you want to be a human being, you shouldn't see it. If you want to become an animal, no, go for it. It's called tapasya. Human life is meant for tapasya. But we hear about it, and our senses become agitated, some specific sense, especially the tongue, the belly, the genitals, and then the soul thinks, I can't live without this, I have to figure out how to get it. And so lust the intelligence. The soul makes a decision and decides, I'm going to gratify my senses. So his intelligence is supplied to him by Krishna what to do in order to gratify the senses. What button to press, what telephone to call, what store to go to. Krishna supplies the intelligence. So lusty intelligence influences the soul to acquire a false ego. Because without the false ego, there's nothing very enjoyable watching our senses contact their object. We actually have to believe that we're actually Romeo or Juliet or Tarzan or Jane. We have to believe that we're actually doing something. So that's called a false ego. Lusty intelligence influences the soul to acquire a false ego by which it identifies itself with the gross body and the subtle sense, the subtle mind, and therefore tries to enjoy sense gratification. Now, most people think this is the only thing that exists. Find some sense object, let my senses become attracted to it, let me make the necessary endeavor with my active organs and knowledge-acquiring organs to meet my senses with their objects, and then enjoy. Enjoy for a moment, as Prabhupada was saying, enjoy for an hour, a day, but then the enjoyment ceases and the misery comes. Yanmai tunadi grihamedi sukham hitucham. So the happiness of material life is grihamedi life. Yanmai tunadi grihamedi sukham hitucham kanduyanena iva dukkha dukkha iva dukkha dukkam. It's compared to the rubbing of two hands together to relieve an itching sensation. There's undoubtedly pleasure if you have an itch and you scratch, then you feel some relief. You feel some pleasure from being relieved from the itch. But after some time, you keep on scratching, and then there's blood. And it's not so pleasant anymore. So that's material life. Scratch the itch, and then after a while, there's some misery. Yanmai tunadi grihamedi sukam hitu cham kanduyanena iva dukkha dukkam kandutivat manasijam vishaheta dira. That manasijam, it's a mental idea that actually I'm feeling happiness, I'm just relieving the itching sensation, the misery. Call that happiness. Yanmai tunadi grihamedi sukam hitu cham kanduyanena iva dukkha dukkam kandutivat, let's see, index of verses quoted, index of Sanskrit verses. Yeah, 1990. $9.45. Kanduyanena karya eva dukkha dukkam triptyanti neha bahu dukkha bhaja triptyanti neha kripana bahu dukkha bhaja kandutivat manasijam vishaheta dira. So this is the happiness of the kripanas. They want to enjoy themselves, and that's the amount of enjoyment they're going to get. They could do something that would be enjoyable for everyone, but instead they simply want to scratch their itch. Triptyanti is become satisfied. Neha, kripana, bahu, dukkha bhaja, subject to various types of material unhappiness. Therefore, Krishna says, Tasmat tvam indriyanyado, niyamya bharatarshava, Patmanam prajahiyenam jnana vijnana nashanam. Therefore, in the very beginning, Arjuna curbed this great simplest sin by regulating the senses. Krishna doesn't say stop sense gratification. That's not possible. We have to gratify the senses to some extent. But we should gratify them in such a way as that they don't become unnecessarily disturbed. They actually become satisfied. So that's by regulation. We have the example, if you fast for a day, then when you eat, then everything tastes so much better. And if you keep on eating all day long, you don't even notice the taste anymore. So it's not that you lose happiness by regulating the senses, but actually they become gratified. Then they stop bothering one unnecessarily. Therefore, it says that one should eat to live and not live to eat. That was the first thing I learned in French. So in the same way, we have to yuktahara viharasya, yukta chetasva karmasu, yukta swapna bodhasya, yoga bhavati dukkha. That a yogi doesn't eat too much or eat too little, sleep too much or sleep too little. One who's temperate in his habits of eating, sleeping, work, and recreation can mitigate all the material pains by the practice of the yoga system. So when the senses become pacified, then we can think about Krishna without disturbance. Of course, if our senses are pacified and we simply use it to go to sleep, well, now I'm nice and peaceful, I can sleep peacefully. That will not be very good. And in Artha and Vritti, there are different types of anarthas that keep us from coming to Nishta. And one of them is just being rasava, having a taste for material enjoyment, but also, when there is no taste for material enjoyment, indifference. Just not care, well, it's all right, I'm not impelled, but I'm lazy. I don't want to do anything. There's Rasavad and what was the other one? There's Rasavad is a taste for material enjoyment. What is the one of indifference? Laya, sleepiness. Yeah, sleepiness. Laziness. So one has to be careful that, all right, now I'm liberated from my material distress, but I should try to seek positive happiness, not happiness in ignorance, which is Laya. Instead, I should seek happiness in spiritual life, because if I seek happiness in Laya, then I'm sure to fall back into eating, sleeping, mating, defending as my primary duty of existence. So it's not enough to just get liberated from our material pangs. We should seek positive happiness in Krishna consciousness. Then we won't be disturbed in any material circumstance. Whether, as it says, Prakriti, the end of the 14th chapter, Arjuna is asking about what is the symptoms of a liberated person. So Krishna says, Prakasham cha nivritim cha moham eva cha pandava nidveshti sampravritani ninivritani kankshati udasinadvat asino gunayo va vichalyate gunavartanti ityevam yovatishati nengate. Prakasham cha pravitim cha. One who's not disturbed when there's illumination. So we think, well, if I can become illuminated, I'd certainly be happy. But we should understand that one moment we may become illuminated, enlightened. We think, wow, I understood that. Now I'm liberated. Next moment, we're in illusion again. Oh, but look at that. Prakasham cha, pravritim cha, attachment. Moham eva chavan. Oh, we're in depression. Everything's bad. The sky is falling. So we have to understand that these things are going on in the material world, and we have to become detached from them. We can't guarantee that I'm in the control of the material nature, and then once I remember something or get some transcendental knowledge, then it's going to be there forever for me. It may be there, but it may get covered over by attachment or delusion. And therefore, one has to remember oneself as Krishna's eternal servant and in any material circumstance. Then one can actually think about Krishna within the heart, which is the very essence of all the knowledge and the illumination, not get carried away by everything we think we know or that we think we've realized. Because we may have a perfect memory now. When we get older, we may even not even remember who we are anymore. But if we can remember who Krishna is, then our life will be perfect. Braj Vihari went to see the older Puri Maharaj, who was over 100 years old. And Puri Maharaj said, who's there? He said, Braj Vihari. He said, who's that? I can't remember anything. He said, now I'm so old, I can't remember anything. All I can remember is, the only thing left is faith. All I can remember is Krishna. So, at the end of life, if all we can remember is Krishna, then we're doing all right. All this knowledge we may think we have, if it culminates in remembering Krishna under any circumstance, then our life is perfect. If we think we know so many things and we can't remember Krishna, then we're just wasting our time. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions? Prakasham cha pravitim cha moham eva cha pandava nedveshti sampravritani innivritani kankshati.
Hare Krishna. So you mentioned that everything falls in these 4 categories. And I was wondering, you mentioned also those that wingspan of a butterfly. So where would that fall in?
Very, very tiny in a small place in those 4. Well, why are people interested in a butterfly? Because they're different. They like the way it looks. reminds them of the girlfriend or something. It's all related. Everything reminds us of something else, which ultimately gets down to the same thing. Eating, sleeping, mating, defending. Otherwise, there's no taste. We may not know exactly, just like in the spiritual world, Radha and Krishna, everywhere they look, they see each other. When Krishna goes into the forest of Vrindavan, everything he sees there reminds him of Srimati Radharani. And when Radharani goes, to prepare something for Krishna in the kitchen, or she goes into the forest too, everything she sees, the tamal tree or the clouds in the sky, everything reminds her of Krishna. So Krishna is always remembering Srimati Radharani, and Radharani is always remembering Krishna. So the same thing here in the material world. Everything reminds us of something like that. It's all comes back to the same relationship. Therefore, we see if we let our minds wander, then they always wander back to the same subject matters. We may think, this is very innocent, or I'm just watching a nice cartoon or a nice show on television. But ultimately, it'll just bring our mind back to the same eating, sleeping, mating, defending. Everything that's called association. Because everyone's looking for pleasure, so everything will bring us back to what we think is the highest pleasure we've experienced. Spiritual and material. Anything else? Seems rather cruel. So strict. Just want to get a little material enjoyment. And it winds up, I have to pay such a big penalty for such a small thing. But that's what every ant and plant was thinking too. Just a little something. Come on. You wind up, how did I get here? My God. Who do I complain to? Tell it to the Supreme Judge. All right, thank you very much. Karantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanande.